So you want to go to your first hackathon, but you're not sure how to get in or what to do, or what even hackathon is even. So in part of our sort of hacker festive spirit of Hackmas 2019, today we're going to be talking about hackathons, how to get into them, how to apply, and what to do there, and how to make the most of your time there. So first, let's talk about what a hackathon is. So a hackathon essentially is an innovation marathon. There's anywhere from 12 to 36 to 48 hours of non-stop coding and building and designing, and all the attendees take that time to go and try to innovate on a new project. They're intended to be, or at least most hackathons are intended to be, like sort of educational, fun, idea generating things. It's less about the product that you make and more about the idea behind it, and I'll go into that a bit later. If you're looking into hackathons, one place I'd recommend looking is MLH, or Major League Hacking. They're an organization that holds, they have sponsors and partners with some of the largest hackathons in the world. They hold hundreds of hackathons in their hackathon season, and their main goal is to be free and educational focused. So all the hackathons you see on that website will be free, except for if you need to travel there. But generally, yeah, most hackathons are very, very beginner level, they're entry level, so you don't actually need that much experience to get into one and to make the most of it. Now, speaking of getting into a hackathon, how do you even get in? Well, some hackathons are pretty easy. The local hack day stuff, which are the 12-hour hackathons held by Major League Hacking, you can get in basically just by registering. They have no application process, it's just first come, first serve, and then however many people go or however many people go. Then there are some hackathons like Hack the North or NW Hacks, the two that I have experience with, where there is an application process, and that sometimes requires you showing your resume, showing your GitHub account. You might also need to, write a couple of paragraphs, and so they'll look at all of that stuff. I know in particular NW Hacks has done something where they actually talk about their application process, and so they explain how they'll weight it depending on what you actually have to present to them. So if you have a really good portfolio, they'll look at your portfolio first. If you have a really, really strong application but not that much experience, like you're a first-time hacker, they'll look at your application more than at your portfolio. So that's always a good thing to keep in mind. The best advice I can give is actually put some time into it, and try your best, and don't worry if you don't get into one hackathon. You can always build up a portfolio, just continue working at it. I didn't get into Hack the North the first time I applied, but that was not a big deal. I kept on working on it. I built up my portfolio. I wrote a better application the next year, and then I got in. If you don't get in, it's not the end of the world. There are some hackathons, especially some super beginner level hackathons. For example, the hackathon that we're hosting, VH Hacks, which is happening in April. So if you're in the Vancouver area and you're a high school student, keep that in mind. That one's a registration based one. But let's say you've applied and you get into your hackathon, and now what? The first thing that I know is widely discussed is the approaches to hacking. So there's a lot of different approaches to a hackathon. So we have the social hacker, we have the learner, and we have the innovator. So these three are they're sort of self-explanatory. So the social hacker is someone who wants to go there, have fun, get to network, get to know new people, attend some of the events. The learner is someone who goes there for the workshops, to try new APIs, to try new tools, to get to play with hardware that they don't usually have access to. And an innovator is someone who goes there with a project in mind. They know what they want to do, they know this process, they step by step, they carry it out, and they have a full finished project by the end of it. All of these paths are fine. It just depends on what kind of hacker you are, and you can switch in between the two depending on which hackathon you go to as well. I know for NW Hacks, I was definitely more of an innovator / learner, but for Hack the North, I went in there hoping to be sort of innovating, sort of creating a project, but I ended up being more of a social hack. I went to a bunch of the events, I went to the socials, we're hackathon organizers. It just depends on how you're feeling, and all of these are perfectly valid ways to spend your hackathon. It just depends on what you actually enjoy. Let's say you don't really want to choose between these two and you just want to get an idea down for your hack, right? How do you generate that idea? If there's a hackathon and it has a theme around it, so I know XD Hacks have the theme of sustainability. The UBC Local Hack Day always has the same theme, which is inclusivity, accessibility, and diversity. You can shape your project around those themes first, and then you can get into the more specific details. So if there's hardware, you want to look around and look at some hardware. You can see how you can integrate the hardware. You can look at the workshops and see how the workshops work out for what you learn and what you can build with it. I know for NW hacks, we didn't have an idea for a project going in. We went to the hardware lab first thing. We checked out what hardware they have. I saw the accelerometer sensors, and then I just sort of generated my idea from there. So you don't really need to have an idea or anything yet before you go into a hackathon. You can go in with no team, go make a team at the event. So it's really not as high pressure or as high stakes as you might think it would be. So let's say now you have your project idea, so you know what you actually want to work on now. Now it's time to actually get to start to work. So you're probably going to have a team. Part of being in a team is collaborating. So the first thing that I would recommend you guys do is go to make a GitHub account or something along those lines. There's also GitLab, but GitHub is the more popular one. Yeah, so if we go to my profile for my GitHub account, this is my Inno Studios GitHub. You can see I have a bunch of repositories here. This is basically a list of all the projects that I have. So I have my website, I have the latest hackathon project, a Discord bot, an adventure game I'm working on, some other stuff. GitHub is really cool because you can collaborate with other people on it. So let's go to like Recharge. This is the project that we made for Build Day. Actually, you can check out the vlog on the channel as well. We have our project here, and it shows us all the file like in an actual sort of file manager type way. We have the app, and then we can see all the code and stuff. And then you can add collaborators to it if you go into the settings of a new repository. Collaborators, and then you can add collaborators here. There's also more things like branches or whatever, but like if you're going in as your first time and if you haven't used Git before, just like push to the master branch, and essentially a branch is like different versions of your project that can exist at the same time. And then when you have like let's say like component A is working and then component B is working, you can combine them two back into the master branch, and that's what the final project is. Once you have a GitHub account, and if you've made your project, how do you actually access that? A tool that I use, and I'm not like sponsored or affiliated, but a tool that I use is GitKraken. GitKraken is really cool because it shows you all your changes here, all your unstaged files and your changes. When you stage a file, it'll be a staged file, and you can commit it. When you commit it, make sure you have descriptive commit messages. You can see how all of my commit messages explain what happened. When you make a commit message, for example, test commit for Osmeshima. What this does is it says, okay, this is one version, this is one change that I've made. You can continue to change it before anything actually updates on the cloud or in GitHub. When you actually want to update the file for everybody, so let's say you've done a bunch of work and you tested it and it's like, oh, this works, this is cool. You could commit all your changes, push it, and then once you've pushed it, everybody who has access to your repository can then pull, and then they'll get all the changes that you just did. Now there is something to keep in mind, which is that if people are working on the same file at the same time and they do changes to the same things, you could end up in what's called a merge conflict, which is basically they're trying to push two changes to the same file in the same place. And that sort of messes up with the code a little bit. So make sure that you guys are, if you're working in a team, make sure to outline who's working in what section, so that way things don't sort of muddle up and get mixed up with each other. Yeah, that's basically how GitKraken works. I think it's a really useful tool. You can see all your projects at the top, you can see your branches, but again, the main part is just really useful for both version control and for collaboration. So that's how you collaborate on a project. But collaborating on a project isn't all that there is. Let's start off with APIs, which are application programming interfaces. And essentially, they're just these big tools. They're like a lot of code that's compressed into one little tool and then thrown into some web server somewhere. Some APIs, some popular APIs are stuff like the Spotify web API. This is if you want to make a Spotify app. There's the Firebase, which has a whole bunch of different stuff you can work with, a bunch of machine learning stuff, analytics, database management, login, authentication, that kind of stuff. There's Google Cloud, which is, there's a bunch of different APIs you can work with, and these are all really, really handy tools to get like really powerful pieces of software without having to build it yourself. Basically, it builds all of this for you. And if you want to know how to start using your using APIs and stuff, every API is different. For example, like JDA is a Discord bot API that I've been using to learn how to make Discord bots. So they all have their own documentation on how to get it set up. So it'd be like, oh, this is how this works, this works, this works. You'll have stuff like your private key or your public key. So this token thing would be replaced by something you have in your developer profile. So everything is different. You'll have to look into it yourself. How you would actually get this working in your code is using stuff like, well, let's say you're using the language Java. You could use Maven or Gradle. So Maven looks something like this. So it's a normal Java project. You can see this is just Java. Some things aren't imported properly because there's some like errors with the stuff right now. But you can see like up here, it's importing all of the stuff that was in that API, the deviation, JDA, which is the Java Discord API. And then they have this XML file, which is basically where you have all your API stuff. So you can see here is the dependency. This is the actual file that we're pulling from. This is the library that houses all the code for how to create a Discord bot in Java. And so every API has something similar to this. Also ignore some of the code on the side here, because I basically made my bot bully other bots by like insulting them. But anyways, so APIs work like this, and then they have a whole bunch of like really handy code that you can use, and it's able to like allow you to make a much bigger project faster with more tools. And sometimes sponsors even have prizes if you use their APIs. So that's how APIs and stuff works. And at this point, the rest of the creating your project is up to your own imagination. It's up to what skills you have, and it's for you to sort of showcase what you can do in your allotted time span. So I want to talk about the idea of a minimum viable product. So this is essentially just a demoable, like proof of concept project that doesn't have to be fully functioning or polished whatsoever. It just needs to show that your idea has merit and that your idea can actually, you know, eventually be turned into something that works. So it's your prototype, right? So for example, an example of a minimal viable product would be our NW Hacks project. So if you guys have watched the vlog, the idea behind that project is we had our phones. It uses accelerometer data to sort of create an idea of who we were, and then it machine learned that to figure out, oh, am I carrying my phone or somebody else? But our project had 3 moving parts to it that weren't put together into one project, right? We had the actual phone, which was getting accelerometer data, exporting it to a JSON file. We had a machine learning backend that took the JSON file, read it, and then created a profile for each individual person. And then we had a notification handler where you could send a notification from your phone to your smartwatch, and then if your phone was taken, you'd know by your smartwatch that, oh, someone took my phone. But we didn't have these 3 pieces put together, but regardless, we were still able to demo it, present it to the judges, and be like, hey, this is our project idea. And we won top 20 for that, even though like we had nothing, not even close to like a finished product, right? So the idea behind a minimum viable product is just having something that can showcase your idea and prove that your idea works, or prove that your idea doesn't. You know, it's like science, right? A null result doesn't mean it's not a result. Something that like doesn't work, or like you tried but you still couldn't get it to work fully, if the idea is there, it's still a good idea. You know, don't give up on it. And speaking of your idea and presenting, what about pitch it? So most hackathons, at the end of the hackathon, they allow you to present to a panel of judges, or like 2 or 3 judges, or they'll be circling around to judge your project and be like, oh, is this cool? Do you think this is cool? Whatever. How should you structure that? I guess that's a question that I've always had in my head. And a formula that sort of works for me is essentially you have sort of 3 parts to it. You have your idea, you have what project you have, and you have the potential. We're gonna base this around the scope of our NW Hacks project. So our idea was to create an anti-theft device. At a very core level, it's basically just biometric authentication using, you know, your walk pattern, your gait. We call this Stride ML. But the impact of this is we see that it could help prevent theft and help prevent, you know, device loss and whatever. And that's sort of the stuff you want to talk about. You want to talk about what your idea is, what it practically is, and what the impact of it is. And it's really important to say, like, why is this product valuable? Why should people care about it? The next step was we showcased our actual product. So we showcased the notification handling, we showcased the walking around. Frank set up a way where we can actually check like different timestamps, and so we showcased like, oh, at this time do we believe that this is actually like this person? And it was either like to what degree of accuracy do we believe that is this person? And then from there we sort of showed how the project could work, and then we talked about our future direction. So what could we do in the future? What would have been done. So like, for example, for this project, it would have been, oh, we could have tied the machine learning to the cloud or made a web server using Flask, and then we could pull from that using the Android app, and then it could actually interface instead of having to, manually take the JSONs from my, computer, copy and paste it over to Frank's computer, do the machine learning, take the result, copy and paste it back to my computer, and then manually hit a button to send a notification. It would be done sort of more universally. And then we're like, yeah, we're almost there. We're so close to getting to work. We're just missing a couple of key components, which is that link between the Python machine learning and the front end sort of biometric stuff, or the front end sort of accelerometer stuff. And that was our pitch. So yeah, you can structure most of your pitches like that. Of course, you can add some like funny skits to it if you want. You can be like, oh, hey, oh no, where's my phone? Or something, be creative, be fun, and then engage the judge. Another thing to keep in mind is if you have a time limit, I know a lot of hackathons have like a 3-minute pitch time limit just because there's a lot of people and not a lot of judges. I would recommend maybe half an hour to an hour before the hackathon, depending on what your hackathon time span is. So if it's a 12-hour, like half an hour before. If it's a 24 or 36-hour, an hour before, you would practice your pitch. Practice it beforehand to make sure you get all your information in the 3 minutes. Otherwise, you risk not having enough to actually, present to the thing. So yeah, and then once you've pitched, then it's just relaxation time. Go socialize, go have fun. You can go grab a snack with your friends, go eat lunch, go eat dinner, whatever's happening. Go hang out with your team, do a bunch of fun stuff. Like, I don't know, I've never liked to go to a hackathon just to hack. I always, the going out and having fun and exploring the sort of surrounding city and area has always also been one of the parts that make a hackathon fun to me, just like walking around and sort of having the freedom. That's more of a me thing than a general hackathon thing, but it's something to keep in mind. And then it's closing ceremonies time. So let's say your project did win. That's great. You have to present it again just one more time for the entirety of whoever's attending closing ceremonies to see. So again, just make sure you practice your presentation. And if you didn't win anything, that's not a big deal. Once again, it's not a really high stakes type of thing. It's more of a learning event than an actual like competitive thing. And yeah, as long as you had a good time, as long as you learned something, I think there's more value in learning something than winning something, especially because hackathons, again, are educational rather than sort of more competitive, going there to win money. But that's more of just how you tackle a hackathon. Anyways, at the end of the day, just try to have fun, make the most of your experience at a hackathon. If any of these tips helped you, that would, it'd be great. Let me know if you think anything here taught you something. Great. Also, since it is Christmas Eve, I hope everyone has a really, really nice Christmas. And, Mashallah, out.